Hey everybody, I'm John and this is Blind Whiskey Reviews. Hey everybody, and thank you so much for joining me today here on Blind Whiskey Reviews, the most honest reviews on YouTube. If you haven't already, don't forget, hit the subscribe button down below so you know every time I'm putting out a new video and starting a new live stream. Now you may be wondering why this time I've got so many different glasses in front of me, and that's because today we're going to be answering a question. And that question is, does it matter what type of water you're mixing in your whiskey? There's several different varieties of water you can use, and do they affect your whiskey differently? Do they make your whiskey taste different as you're adding these different kinds of water? So today, we're going to be using 3 different whiskeys to figure this out. We've got the High West Double Rye, the Henry Mckenna Bottled in Bond, and the 1792 Foolproof. And I've mixed one of 4 different waters into each of these whiskeys, and we're going to figure out if we can tell the difference between the waters and which water tastes the best. So I've mixed in either distilled water, a bottled spring water, a tap water that's charcoal filtered, and we have a premium mixing water, which in this case is the old limestone mixing water. And we'll be I put each one of these waters into the glass. My wife randomly placed the glasses for me, so I don't know which water's in which glass. We're going to figure out, does one of these taste the best? Now, I'll talk a little bit more about the individual whiskeys when we get into those pieces of the test here, but I will tell you that I have proofed each of these whiskeys, and each of these whiskeys starts at a different proof, but I've proofed each of them down to 90 proof. So the High West has a very little bit amount of water, the Henry Mckenna has a medium amount of water, and the 1792 has a lot of water in it. So hopefully that'll kind of help us figure out, if we can't quite taste the difference here, maybe we'll taste it more over on this side where there's a lot more of the water added. So I'm excited to do this video for you, and let's not waste any more time and let's get straight to it. All right, everybody, let's get into the first whiskey. This one we're going to be doing the High West Double Rye, which is originally bottled at 46% alcohol, 92 proof. I've proofed this one down to 90 proof as I did with the other 2, but to proof this 92 proof whiskey down to 90 proof with the little amount of whiskey I used took very little water. It's only got probably like 5 drops of water in each glass, so it didn't take much water. We'll see how that impacts the whiskey and see if we can pick out which one we're going to get. Just so you guys know, I have the results of which whiskey or which water is in which glass here, and I will reveal those to you guys after each whiskey, but I won't be revealing them to myself until the very, very end. But I'll cut the video up and I'll put those in for you guys after each whiskey so you kind of know going into it which one's which. So let's get going. I'm going to speed up the video so you guys don't have to watch me sitting here tasting, going back and forth and doing all that, and I'll come back to you with my notes. All right, so on our first pass, and granted, I need to go back to these and taste them a little bit more, but A and D kind of stood out a little bit to me on this first go. They had a little bit more fruit character, a little more fruit forward. These 2, B and C, felt a little more dull to me. They didn't have as much flavor punch. They weren't as vibrant and complex tasting to me. These ones were a little fruitier and had a little bit more complexity going on. So I'm going to go back through them, giving them another taste, and kind of try to figure out my final result here. All right, guys, I think I've made my decisions. And it kind of panned out the way I did it up front here. I think A is definitively tasting the best for me. Not too far off from D here. These ones are a little bit sweeter. For some reason, the sweetness is a little more forward. They're a little bit fruitier, a little bit more complex tasting than these 2. And these aren't miles apart. These are small differences that I'm tasting to me, but they are a little slightly different, I feel like. So I'm going to say A for me is the best, closely followed by D. And then these 2 were quite a bit different than these 2 in that they were a little bit more, not as complex, a little bit more bitter, like they had a few more bitter qualities come forward. I'm assuming that's part of the water kind of interacting with the whiskey and adding to it. So these 2 were definitively different. B, I felt like was significantly different tasting and didn't help with the whiskey as much. So A, D, C, and B is going to be the order I'm going to say from best to worst. Well, none of them were bad, but I felt like this is the order I'd like to go in. So let me go ahead and reveal to you. I won't know until I'm done with the entire review, but I'm going to reveal to you what these were. All right, the results for the High West. So we went in the order of A, D, C, B. Let's see. So A, A was the tap water, charcoal filtered tap water. D was the bottled water. C was the mixing water. And B was the distilled water. So I really felt like there was a big difference between the first two and the second two. So in this case, the mixing water didn't shine through. The tap water and the bottled water were the two best options here, at least for my palate when I tasted these. So an interesting result. All right, everybody, let's get into whiskey number 2. This one will be the Henry Mckenna Bottled and Bond. This is a 10-year-old, originally bottled at 100 proof, which is 50% alcohol. As with the High West, I have proofed this down to 90 proof. And I have reviewed this in the past, as with all the other whiskeys. So if you haven't already checked them out and you want to check out the actual reviews of the whiskey, I'll do a link up here so you guys know and you can go check those out when you feel like it. So let's get, as with the last one, I'm going to speed up my tasting here, but I'll give you some notes in the middle. All right, so at the first pass, I'm not having as easy of a time of this as I thought it was going to be. I don't feel like there's as much differences between most of them as I expected to have with the increase of the amount of water. I would say that this one has about 5 times the amount of water that the High West did. So I thought the differences would be more prevalent. And as of the first pass, they're not. I will say I feel like D is a little bit sweeter, has a little bit more fruit character, similar to kind of the notes I was giving you on the ones I liked better on the High West. It has a little bit more complexity, not as much bitterness coming through. So I feel like D is definitively, for me on the first pass, the best. But let me give it another go and we'll come up with our final verdict in just a few seconds here. All right, guys, I'm having such a hard time with these 3 in particular. I would still say that D for me is the best. I'm going to try to go back and forth with these just one more time and put an order to them, but they're all very, very close. All right, so this is what I'm going with. D is definitively the best. B, not too far behind. Both were more complex, more full body, more fruity tasting, just more flavorful in general. Didn't have some of the bitterness that these two had. These two are pretty close together, and these two are pretty close together, but I would say D is definitively the best. There's a separation for sure between these two. These two are very close. I felt like this one had a little bit more sweetness and complexity to it than this did. This one was a little bit more bitter, so that's why I put it at the end. So we're going D, B, C, A. So let's go ahead and reveal the results to you guys, and then we'll get on to the next whiskey. All right, the results for the Henry Mckenna. We said D, B, C, and A from best to worst. D was the distilled water. B was the tap water. C was the bottled water. And A was the mixing water. Yet again, another interesting result. It's very mixed. The distilled water, which came in last on the High West, is now first. And the mixing water came in last. So another interesting result. All right, everybody, let's get on to our third and final whiskey. This is the 1792 Foolproof. As with before, if you want to see my review of this whiskey, I'll link it up here for you guys. This is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey bottled at 125 proof, which is 62.5%. And as with the other two, I've proofed this down to 90 proof. Now, obviously, to proof this whiskey down to 90 proof, it took a significant amount of water. It was a little bit over probably 3 times what I put in the Henry Mckenna, which was 5 times what I put in the High West. So there's a lot of water in here. So I really feel like if the water is going to make a difference, we're going to taste it in this whiskey. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, potentially, these are the Henry Mckenna and the 1792 are Kentucky whiskeys. And the old limestone mixing water, which is our premium option here today that we're using, that is a Kentucky limestone filtered water. So essentially that should be a very similar or the same, if not the same water as was used to make this whiskey. So it should really enhance the whiskey and make it taste as good as it possibly can. So I'm really excited to find out if that's the case. So let me get into these whiskeys and I'll give you my notes shortly. right, so my first pass is done. 3A was definitively less fruity, less flavorful, less complex tasting. These three were a little bit closer, but I'm going to need to go back through them to really compare each one to each other. But 3B and 3D, as of now, on my first pass, were a little bit more flavorful, a little bit more bold, complex. So let's give it another pass through and we'll see where we land. All right, guys, I'm still narrowing it down. I'm not going to lie to you, my palate's getting a little fatigued at this point, so I'm trying to get a little water on it, really focus on the flavors and the comparisons. A is definitively the worst, but I really need to, I still need to go through these three. I mean, they're so close. So I'm going to give it one more pass, and the results are coming quick. All right, everybody, this was a really, really tough one. I'm going to go with this order. A was definitively the worst. D, to me, was the richest, most complex, the most flavorful. Had this deep fruit character that really popped through. B and C were very, very close to D and very, very close to themselves. I kept flipping these two back and forth. In the end, I just felt like B was pretty consistently, had that more complexity and depth than C did. So these two could be interchangeable though. I mean, C could easily be second. So I'm going D, B, C, A. That's what I'm doing. So let me give you the results. All right, everybody, let's get to the results for the 1792. We went D, B, C, A, best to worst. D was the mixing water. And that one was very definitively, or not definitively, but that one was clearly the best in this one. B was the bottled water. C was the tap water. And A was the distilled water. So, God, we got such a mixed result on these, on the different results from each whiskey. So, I'm going to tally up the points and see where we land, but very, very interesting. All right, we just finished with our final result of the whiskeys. And what did we learn today? Not a whole lot. We learned that there's not a huge difference between any of these waters. I would say that the distilled water came in last in 2 of the whiskeys. So I think that's pretty definitive in that using the bottled or the jug distilled water probably isn't your best option. I would avoid that. But other than that, the other 3 were very, very close. I tried assigning points to these different positions. If you got first, you got 4 points. If you got last, you got 1 point. And in that instance, tap water won with 9 points, followed by bottled at 8 and the mixing water at 7. So all that tells us is they're all pretty close. There's no definitive difference between the 3, at least on this day in this test. So as much as I'd love to tell you that there's a big reason to go run out and grab that mixing water, I can't. It just didn't show through in this taste test. A big thank you to Limestone Mixing Water. They did provide the water for this taste test today, and I really appreciate them doing that. I wish I can give them a better result, but unfortunately, I gotta be honest, and today, it just didn't shine through. I will tell you, I will be doing this again, and I will be involving more people, and we're gonna get a definitive result for the second time. We're gonna see if it pans out differently. You never know. You know, your palate can be change from day to day, so maybe it'll change on a different day. So we're going to test this again, but as of today, I got to tell you, there was no definitive difference between any of these waters on this taste test. So that means go ahead with the tap water. It's not going to change your whiskey more than anything else. So anyways, guys, thank you for joining me today. As always, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at blind_reviews. You can send me an email at blindwhiskeyreviews@gmail.com. And until next time, cheers.